bright and shiny in my mind. You got me loving, hating, crazy indecision in my mind.
Welcome to the Fall Podcast, where the focus is on deer hunting, tips, tricks, tactics, and stories from across the Midwest. And now, here is your host, Aaron Blasey.
Welcome to the Fall Podcast. I am your host, Aaron Blasey, and this is episode number 55. And on today's episode, I do not have Justin with me, my trusty sidekick and co-host, but I do have a new guest, and his name is Keegan Ziemer. Keegan, how you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. You know, you and I work together now, and I want to get into basically what you do with us and what you have done in the past to kind of get you to where you're at now with us. Mm-hmm. So if you could just elaborate more on that.
Yeah, we've worked together. I think it's like a year.
Yeah.
What, in a month?
We're coming up on a year, yep.
Yeah. So I used to work for Cabela's in the digital department, kind of all over, doing some Google advertising, bounced all over the place with that, and then wanted to get more into storytelling. I love telling stories. I love content creation. I like shooting photos. I love looking at photos and just the story that somebody can tell through photo or video. I think that's the coolest part. And I was so buried in data all the time that I was like, I got to get out of here. I need to do something different. So we had a position on the social team that opened up, and I jumped at it. Was on the social team there for a while, and then the way that things work, it's the people that you meet, the people that you know, and we got put in touch.
Yep.
And it was to do some, side work for the Kiefer brothers. Mm-hmm. I was like, heck yeah, that'd be freaking awesome.
On the social side of things.
The social side of things,
yep.
Yeah. So helping out, running kind of the content calendar, day-to-day posting, things of that nature. So, you were my point of contact, giving me all the pictures, video, hey, this is what's going on, this is what we're doing, keeping me up with the story that's happening in Chris and Casey's life. So the middleman, and then it just evolved.
And that's what I didn't realize, how social media was so powerful until I met you, really. I mean, it's one of those things that's part of our everyday life, but especially in the outdoor industry, and how powerful it is and how much people really rely on it to brand themselves or brand a thing or a company, such as like a Cabela's. That is huge in what they're doing and try to get the word out there. And the same thing with Chris and Casey. We're trying to build their brand as the Kiefer Bros, and be a live side as well, and try to do all that. And it's a full-time job. I mean, you're on Facebook and social media every day, aren't you?
All the time.
All the time.
And that's the thing. Everybody's like, oh, well, I post to Facebook, I could do social media, and it's so much more than that.
Right.
Like, it's tagging your partners, trying to tell the best story you can, and like you said, it's a full-time job. And for Chris and Casey to do everything that they need to do on a daily basis, and then run a Facebook page too, it's just people don't have time to do all that, I think, for the most part, especially when you get to the point of you have a production house and you have a marketing arm and you're doing all these other shoots and things like that. So,
well, and also what I didn't understand is the analytics side of things and when to post. There's certain times a day to post to make it more effective, and there's hashtags that you need to use, and putting hashtags in your comments and stuff like that. All these little integral parts of that might separate you from someone else. A lot of people just think, and I was one of them, throw a post up there, put a couple hashtags on it, name it something, or caption something cool, and then you'll get 100 and 200, 300 likes. Well, that's not it.
Yeah. I mean, you can have the coolest picture, video, whatever it is, and if you're just throwing it up there without any rhyme or reason behind it, it does nothing. You need wind, you need sales, you need wind, and that's kind of like what it is, like you said, time of day. People are on their phones when they wake up in the morning, right after they get to work, hopefully not while they're driving to work, and then when they get home and when they go to bed. So looking at stuff like that, like you're saying, time of day, and then just if you get bored on Instagram or whatever it is and you're searching what you like to do, you're searching different hashtags or
Exactly.
topics, and that's how people find.
Yeah, and people follow hashtags. Like, they can follow the Kiefer Bros hashtag. So every time Kiefer Bros gets hashtag, it'll come up on their feed on Instagram or something, which I think that's pretty cool too. And I didn't know much about that either. So
Yeah.
I'm learning as we go. But I'm glad you're doing it and not me, because it's a job, and I would have to gouge my eyeballs out being on social media all the time.
It's funny. I mean, I get home and there's a lot of times where I'm like, I don't want to be on it personally anymore, because I sit and look at it all day, but it's still cool. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a tool. It's a tool for businesses. It's a tool for, growing your own brand and everything. And it's like, I've met people through social media. You know what I mean?
It's good networking.
It is. It's amazing networking. And if you go into it with like the philosophy that you're going to be who you are and you're going to be genuine and you want to meet people and you want to get to know them, whatever, it's awesome for that.
Yeah.
So,
well, cool. I mean, that kind of tees up, what you're doing with us and what you do on a day-to-day. Now let's kind of jump back. Like, where did you come from? Where, we're in Michigan now, but you're not a Michigan native. Kind of set that stage, like how you were brought up hunting and what you did and basically where you were from.
Yeah. Michigan now for about 4 months. Before that, I was in Denver, and then before that, it was Wisconsin. So going all the way back to my early days in Wisconsin, I grew up hunting and fishing, whitetail, turkey, smallmouth, walleye, panfish, whatever. Loved it. Probably where I'm unique is my hunting partner was always my mom when I was growing up, so I thought that was really cool. Like, she would take me out when I think I was like 5 or 6, and I was sitting in the gun stand with her, and I would just lay on the floor, lay down by the heater. She'd make sure I had candy bars and snacks and whatever, and then it would be like, oh, pass out, take a nap. And so I grew up hunting with her. Still remember her first turkey that we sat in the blind together, called in. It was amazing. Every year I try to get back and turkey hunt with my mom. She's like, it's to me, if I never shot another bird again, but I could go back and call in a time for her every year, I would do it. So yeah, I grew up in Wisconsin, went to college in La Crosse, Wisconsin on the Mississippi River. Still did a lot of hunting. I drove back almost every weekend to be in a bow stand during the fall, fished on the Mississippi River, and then after school, I wanted to find a job in the outdoor industry.
Yep.
And it was probably 3 or 4 months that I was looking for jobs, and I could not find what I thought was what I wanted. And I was starting to, I was at home with my mom and my stepdad and my brother, and I was getting cabin fever, and I just said, you know what, I'm going to take the restrictions off. I had applied for a job in Green Bay, Wisconsin, behind the gun counter at Cabela's. And I was like, what if I take off location and see what happens? And I did, and there was an internship at Cabela's in Denver, and I was like, I don't know. I never really thought about Colorado or Denver.
Yep.
And it wasn't even a week later, I got a phone call and asked about an interview, and I said, sure. And she's like, well, can you do it right now? And I was actually in a Gander Mountain at the time. I was like, yeah, sure, that's fine. So I, was talking to, he was the director of digital, and I had to actually leave Gander Mountain and go take the call from my truck. And it went great, and they called me the next day and said, can you be in Denver in 3 weeks? So
holy shit.
Yeah.
That's quick.
Yeah. It was really fast. Had to try to find an apartment. I'd never been to Denver before.
Yep.
They gave me, look in these little suburbs, this is where you're going to be working. Found an apartment, sight on scene, had to pick it online, book it. And
expensive, probably.
Oh yeah. For an intern, I think my first apartment was like $1,300 or $1,400, and I was like, how am I going to do this? But it was 3 months, and I didn't know, but I was like, I got to do this. This was going to be awesome. So
and that opened up more doors for you as well as far as hunting, because then you took up elk hunting as well, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I kind of want to get into that here in a little bit, but that also brought on something that I want to get into that's relevant right now, which is your mountain turkey hunt that you went on last year, which is super cool to me because I've never done it before, and it was just cool how it all went down. You and I have kind of talked about it, off record. I'd really like to dive into that. So let's kind of tee that up. Like what brought up the idea and And how do you mountain hunt turkeys, I guess?
Yeah, I had never even thought of it either. You don't really think of turkeys being up in the mountains. I mean, I guess you kind of just figure they are. But I had a friend that I had met through work, and he's one of my really good buddies now. His name's Kyle Broughton, and he had done it a couple years and been successful, but I don't think that he was like a crazy avid turkey hunter. It was more of like they were up there scouting for elk, looking for sheds, whatever, during the spring, and we're hearing gobbles and stuff, and it had obviously been turkey hunting, in Nebraska before, but weren't like hardcore into it.
Right.
And so they started applying, and it actually takes points up in the area where they hunt. So I think you can hunt it every other year or every 3 years is where how often you're gonna draw a turkey tag there. And we started hunting together more and more, and right away, like I'm a person where I didn't want to invite myself. I hunted with him the first time I ever hunted with him was just, I went out and I wanted to film. And I was like, I just got to see what this is about. And as an elk hunter, it was crazy. But we started hunting together a lot more. And eventually he's like, hey, just put in for a turkey tag. Let's, you can come along. And last year was the first year that I drew that tag. So it was he and I both drew the tag. And again, I don't like to invite myself on stuff like that. That's not me. But he said, let's go. I have a tag too. I'm like, okay, you're first shooter. You're bringing me out here.
Right.
This isn't my deal. This is yours. Let's do it. So we went out. They have it's all public land, but it's private access through a friend of his dad's, so we can actually get out away from where the parking lot is a little bit easier. And we walked around for the first day and didn't see anything, but they have this. It's like a drainage, so it drops way down off of the side of a face, and then there's a stream that runs through, and then there's this bottom, and they call it Turkey Hollow.
Okay.
And it's like a field where cattle kind of come down
it's
there.
Like
off
a cattle pasture.
Yeah, they come off the sage flats, and it's a low area, cattle drinks there, everything like that, and that's where they've sat in the past and done really well. Obviously, call it Turkey Hollow, so they're like, all right, well, let's set up a tent here, and we'll come in the morning.
Were you hunting with a gun or a bow?
Bow.
Okay.
Both Kyle and I had a bow, and his dad was with us just to be along on the thing. His dad's awesome, and he carried a shotgun just in case one of us were like, give us a shotgun.
Right.
So we set up the turkey tent that night or that afternoon, and then came back in the morning. And I think as we were walking out that day, we heard a gobble, and we're like, okay, good. We got something going on in the morning. In the morning, we get into the tent. It's still dark, and they're hammering up on this ridge that's above us.
Ridge, like a mountain.
Like a mountain.
It's a mountain.
Yeah, I mean, it's
what you picture in Colorado, and it's a mountain.
Yeah, it's got to be 200 yards up, and it is just, I mean, we're sitting there, and you peek out the top of the tent, you're looking up there, and you can just see tree lines, sun's starting to come out, and that's where the gobbling's coming from, is up on top of this hill. And
were you thinking that they were going to pitch off down into your little set, or do you think they were going to, like...
Yeah, well, I mean, like, that was the crazy idea. It was like, how cool would this be? And the more realistic idea was that they were going to kind of walk down the little ravine and then end up funneling into us down here. None of that actually happened. We're still hearing gobbling, and all of a sudden we start hearing drumming, which anybody who turkey hunts knows, like,
they're close,
they're
too.
Here.
they're within our presence here.
Yeah, and Kyle peeks out. He's on the left side, or I'm on the left side. He's on the right side. I'm running a camera. His dad's sitting in the middle, and I peek out the left window, and here comes a Tom fanned out.
By himself,
coming right into the decoys. I'm like, Kyle, get your bow. He's right here. He's coming. And it was funny. He gets right into the decoys, and Kyle told me I could say this, but he flings the first arrow and completely misses. Probably like 15 to 17 yards. And the bird actually comes faster into the decoys after it just got startled and ran in even faster and starts attacking the Tom decoy.
No, not to get too far off track, but you've hunted Easterns and you've hunted Merriams. You're hunting Merriams out there.
Yeah.
So what is the differences of them? Are they dumber? I've heard they're dumber birds. Like they're easier to call, easier. Like, is that true? I mean, Easterns are tough.
They are tough. They are really tough. And I would say that more than anything, especially these birds here, probably don't get hunted near as much as the average bird by us. So yeah, they are more receptive to a call, I think. Although this Tom didn't gobble or anything. He never made a noise. We didn't even know he was down on the ground with us. We were still hearing him up top of the ridge.
Yep.
But they're different. The year before, I went out with him and his brother-in-law, and we had Tom's gobbling, and we're going up the sage flat after him, and all of a sudden, it's like 9, 10 in the morning, and we see 2 turkeys fly back up in the roost, and it was 2 Toms that just flew back up in a tree. So I don't know if it was like a predator or, but they're up there. I'm like, man, I don't know how to figure them out.
Yeah, and that's just what I've heard. I've never hunted Merriam's, but beautiful bird, probably the most beautiful out of all of them to me anyway.
Yeah.
But and that's one of the unique things about hunting a turkey with a bow is if you miss, usually they don't freak out too much, or even if you kill one, because I've killed 8 birds with my bow now, and every one, like not every one, I've had a few, it'll just flop around, and then the other ones will just come in and just start beating the tar out of them. You can usually double up, which is nice. So.
It's cool. It's so cool. And
but anyway, he missed, so.
He missed, and it keeps, like I said, it runs into the decoys even faster. So it was outside of the decoys, but, walking in kind of slow, fanning, unfanning. And, it runs into decoys, and the next one, he smoked it, and it ran. And, we're high-fiving, whatever, and he runs out and goes and grabs it, throws it behind the tent, and he's like, all right, it's your turn. They're still up there.
They're in the roost, or they've come down yet?
We thought that they had to be down, but it levels out up top a little bit, and there's kind of a meadowy area, and we're like, well, maybe they're up there with some hens, but they're still gobbling as he's walking out to get his bird. You can't see up there. They can't see down unless they're right at this edge. So we've switched spots. I get my bow out in front of me, and he gets behind the camera, and we're still like just reliving it because I'm like, man, that's so cool. And then the gobbling continues, and I start calling a little bit, and we're looking out, and all of a sudden, right over the top, we see this Tom silhouette himself right over the top of the ridge, and he just lets out another gobble, and we're like, man. He's hot. He's looking, and there was no hens, anything like that. And it was like a movie. It was like, when in those movies where it's like a firebolt or something, and then it busts out, and it's a flying bird.
It's a majestic bird.
Yeah, it was exactly like that. I'm like, oh my gosh! And it pitched off the hill and just soared down from 200 yards above, over the top of the decoys, out to the right, hits the ground, spins, and goes into a fan like right away. And we're like, wow.
So he saw your decoy spread down there, and he's like, I got to get down there.
And he just pitched right off the hill.
That's awesome.
It was so cool. I wish we could have got that on camera because it was, it felt like we watched it forever, just soar right down over. They don't beat their wings or anything, but he came right in, started coming into decoys, and like Toms do, they kind of get out, and he got a little hesitant, and he turned away, and I was like, man, I'm not going to get a chance to do it. And all of a sudden he spun back, got into decoys, and I shot him, and he flopped, and then he didn't die right away. He poked his head back up, and I got nervous, grabbed a shotgun, whiffed on him once. He went running away, and I just went booking, we have to double up today. This is such a cool thing. It was within 10 minutes of him shooting his bird, going out and grabbing it, and we're in the mountains, and it's beautiful, and we both have bows, and so I go running out with the shotgun, and this thing is like trying to cross the stream now, and I'm like, okay, and finished it, and grabbed it out, but it was so cool.
So where'd you hit him with the bow?
I hit him, so he was turned a little bit sideways, and I hit him a little bit low.
Okay, so right through the breast probably?
I think it was just back of that, so it was like lower organs, but had I left him, I think it would have been fine, but
That's tricky.
I've had too many get away with the, not myself, I've seen them where they get away with the bow and they can just run, and then you don't find them, and I didn't want that to happen.
Yeah, it's tricky. I've shot quite a few birds with a bow, and I've never really had them go far. I've had one kind of fly a little bit, but it was done deal. But I've only ever shot him in the wing bone. I've never shot him in the front, never shot him in the back, as they say, up the butt kind of thing. That's a good way to shoot him too. but I always go for that wing bone and seem to break him down and kill him right there. So
yeah.
I mean, it's pretty cool. I'm gonna try to get the bow back out again this year because last year I shot 2 birds with a shotgun. I went on an 8-year stretch where I killed birds with a bow every year, and then I'm like, I'm gonna get the shotgun out. Killed 2 birds with a shotgun. So this year it's like I'm gonna go bow again, but I'm thinking about doing it no blind, just like straight
No
Cherokee
blind.
style.
That would be cool.
That's what I want to do.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm hoping so. But I mean, so you're out in Denver.
Mhm.
You've taken up turkey hunting. Now you're getting to elk hunting. So, what was your elk hunting experience like? Like gearing up for your first elk hunt, never doing it before. Like what's that like?
Yeah. My first elk hunt, it was actually absolutely crazy. So, I was telling you, I had never done it before. I just wanted to go out and see what it was about.
Yep.
And I had just gotten brought on at Cabela's full-time after my internship. Kyle and 2 guys I worked with had all drawn tags, so they had a bull tag and 2 cow tags. And it was going to be the 3 of them, maybe Kyle's dad, and I was like, can I please come along and just film this thing? I was like, I just want to walk along. I want to be out there and see what this is about. I have no idea. So he's like, yeah, sure. Totally fine. We meet up at one of the guys' houses, pack the truck, get up there. We're getting all of our stuff ready the night before, and my camo bag did not get thrown in the truck.
Oh man.
So I get there and I have a duffel bag with my t-shirt, sweatpants, like my street clothes. Yep. And I had my camera, which was good, as a little Sony Handycam, but I don't have my boots. I don't have any of my camo. And we're going out on an elk hunt for the next couple of days.
You're gonna spike out. You're not gonna come back to the truck or anything.
We were staying at the house that's out there.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
But yeah, I mean, we would come back there, sleep at night, but then out for the entire day. And I don't have any of my stuff, so I get some of Kyle's old boots that he had at his dad's house. His dad had some old. I wore like army pants. They were like old army surplus pants for this thing, and I still am trying to get a hold of them because I think they're cool. But then I got a backpack and yeah, just like a bunch of whatever I could string together. Yeah. So the first day we're out walking around. We split up 2 and 2, and we're not seeing a ton, but it was glassing that morning. That's when I saw my first elk, and it was a cow, and she was walking through a meadow, and I'm like, man, that's cool. She was probably 300 yards away. Not much happened the rest of that day, and I'm like, oh, man, this is a lot of walking, a lot of hiking. This is tough. And Kyle's dad came out that night, and from the top of the ridge had glassed a bunch of cows and some bulls down in, it was actually in Turkey Hollow.
Oh,
so
okay.
He came to the house that night and was like, we got to split up. This is what we got to do in the morning. It's going to...
What was the game plan? Like, what were they trying to formulate?
So there's Turkey Hollow, and then to the west of that is where it starts sloping uphill.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other side, it slopes uphill. So it's like this natural funnel. There was 2 guys that were going to come in from the top, and then 2 guys that were going to wrap all the way around it and come in from the bottom, and just figure that we'd cover that entire sage flat.
Gotcha.
So I went with the 2 guys that were going around the top and going to come in to the bottom on the actual sage flat, not go down through Turkey Hollow and push up. I picked the right group.
Did you?
Yeah. We get up that morning and we get to this saddle, and we drop down and we're starting to walk through the trees, and it was it's scrub oak is what, I don't know if that's what you actually call it. That's what I call it now too. Yep. But it's these small scrubby oak trees everywhere in amongst the sage, and we were walking through it, starting to see some fresh sign or whatever, and then all of a sudden Kyle had split and went one way, and the other guy went the other way, and we start seeing flashes through moving slow through the scrub oak, and I'm with my other buddy, and I'm behind him filming, and all of a sudden I see antlers. I had that on film through the scrub oak, and it's a pretty decent bull, but then hear a gunshot, chaos, and right down this little shooting lane that we're looking, another cow stops right there, and so the guy in front of me shoots, doubled up, 2 cows. It was like just absolute craziness, because he's waiting on this bull You know, he's on his shooting sticks waiting for this bull to maybe show itself. Boom, gunshot. Just chaos, turns down this other shooting lane, and it stopped like it was meant to be. She just stopped right there and looked at us, and he dropped her right there.
That's crazy.
It was crazy. So we packed those two out, and then celebrated that. And then the next morning we're like, all right, well, we know they're on this hillside. We'll go back. And so the other two guys went, and I followed them the next day, and it was like we were in the garage that morning. And I hadn't hunted before, but I didn't like that I was carrying weight. And I'm like, man, do I need my rain gear? And he's like, I don't know. I mean, it's not that heavy, but I'm carrying like my launch and some camera gear and whatever else. I'm like, nah, I'm going to leave it. So I left it in the garage.
Oh, boy.
It starts downpouring at about 9 a.m. But as soon as it started downpouring, they started bugling like crazy. And this is in October.
So it's a gun hunt. It's late.
It's a rifle. Yeah, it's a rifle hunt. So that's not typical. But they are absolutely going crazy. There's at least 2 bulls in this group just hammering. And this is my first time hearing bugles. And it's like downpouring, and it's like you could just feel it. And I'm like, this is awesome. Like I was hooked from that. And then we start seeing elk pour off that hillside in Turkey Hollow, and you can just spot them, and we're like, man, they're going to come. That was private land, and they're coming onto public, and we're like, this is going to work. Well, we get to the edge, and they're down on the neighbors whose private land and just going crazy, and we could hear
not
them,
coming on public.
We couldn't get to
Yeah.
them. So we had to back out. Did that, and actually that night we went back to the same spot, and where that turkey pitched down from, that's where the bull came. So we had a bull that was going nuts. Kyle's dad had come back out. He's a lot better caller than any of us. We're like, we have bulls in here. They're going nuts this morning. We need help. Can you please can you come out and help us? And he did, and the way that it worked out, it was, this bull just comes down off the hillside. He's down in the meadow. I wasn't by Kyle at the time, but all of a sudden we hear a gunshot, and I'm sitting behind the guy that I was filming, and I just take off on a dead sprint. I'm like, I gotta see what's going on, and I get down to him, and it's down in this meadow, and he had hit it, but he hit it in the leg.
Low.
He hit it low, so he shot again and missed, and he's gonna hate that I say that he missed, but he did. And then we start tracking, and we get down to this meadow, and all of a sudden in the brush we hear just like branches breaking, whatever. I'm like, it's got to be that bull, and we hear it run down through Turkey Hollow, can hear the creek, and it starts to hit this hillside that's facing away from us. It's going up the hill, and I'm not kidding. It's the best shot I've ever seen in my entire life. I will find this video of it. This elk is running up this valley. It's got to be 300 yards, and he freehands it and drops it right on the side of the hill.
Holy cow!
It was the coolest. I
Desperation,
lost
Hail Mary.
It seriously was, and we looked at it too, and like, had he not hit it on that one, the elk would have lived. The first one was like up. It was just above the knee,
joint,
the knee or the
yeah,
joint
yeah.
of the elk.
Yep.
It would have been fine.
Wow.
And then he drops it right there.
How big was he?
He was a 6x6.
Really?
Yeah, good bull. I mean, I'd never seen whatever. So the day before, I see 2 cows. I'm like, man, these are huge.
Yeah.
And then we get up to this bull, and he's even bigger. And I'm like, this is unreal.
That's
like,
crazy.
So cool. You know, we broke it down, and then it was dark out by the time this happened. So we're carrying it out at night by headlamp.
Yep.
And it was like tough and awesome, though. I mean, like the pack out was it's the best part to me.
Well, it's like bittersweet, right?
So, yeah.
You know,
you're doing it with everybody, and
Yep.
yeah.
I've got to film. Never been on an elk hunt, but I got to film them and got to pack out one elk. So that was kind of like the same. Like, you worked 10 days for this on public land, and finally kill one and pack it out. It's like that bittersweet moment. And I've packed out other animals too, like in Alaska, and it's like you've got a long hike, and you just reminisce about it. You don't even care about the weight on your back usually. And
the pain doesn't matter.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. The blisters don't matter, and throw some more moleskin on your feet and just keep going, you know?
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Now, transition a little bit. So the next year after that, you got your first elk tag, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you went in with your bow. And what happened then?
I
Still haunts you, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I was with he wasn't my roommate at the time, but I lived with him my later part of living in Colorado, and we were I was out there for like 3 or 4 days in another spot, not having anything happen. He was actually still at work for Cabela's, and I text him and I'm like, dude, it is so bad. He had shot a bull earlier in the season, like way early, and was done. And he's like, man, that happened quick.
Yep.
He wanted to be out there, so I texted him. I was like, I need some help. Can you help me? And he did. He was like, yeah, I got a spot. We're gonna go there. I'll call. And we get there, and the first 2 days, the wind's blowing like crazy. You can't hear anything. But then the second morning, we heard a bugle, and we're like, if we're hearing a bugle right now through this wind, it can't be that far away. We chase these elk for probably 2 hours in the morning, and it's 3 bulls and a herd of cows, and this is end of September, so by this time they're pretty herded up.
Yep.
And sticking to their cows and everything. And they hit a hillside with like a marshy wallow area below it that we had just come trudging through to try to cut them off, but they dipped up top of us. We're like, well, we can't go through there. They'll see us. They're walking this hillside, so we ducked way below, came back up on the hill, and we're like, all right, well, they're either to our left and we're out in front of them, or they're to our right and we're behind them. We're starting to find fresh sign. And David's like, let's go up this trail just a little bit, and I'm going to set up and call. And I was like, okay, fine. And I turn around and take 2 steps, and I look up the trail, and there's 3 cows sitting there staring at us. I'm like, oh no. Drop down to our knees, and they bolted. And then like with that was just commotion. All of a sudden, David,
Elk all over.
Yeah, elk all over. David starts calling, doing some cow calls. We have a bull that just rips off a bugle, and I had a buddy from Wisconsin, one of my best friends from high school. His name's Ryan, that came along, and he saw the bull, and I didn't, but he's sitting there with his hands going, oh my God, like big bull, and my buddy David grabs his hands. He's like, stop moving. Grabs his hands and throws him down, and then so we're all starting to look over our left shoulders up this hill, like this bull's moving up behind us, and David bugles, and then a bugle comes from right below us, and I turn back, we all turn back, and here's this bull coming up the hill, and it's 30 yards, getting closer and closer, and it's all these little pines that are in there, big pines and little pines, so there's a bunch of undergrowth, and he gets to 19 yards or something like that. And all I can see are his feet, and every once in a while when he puts his head down, I can just see his antlers underneath all this. And I'm like, holy cow. Turns to his right, starts walking, and it's just line of trees after line of trees after line of trees. And I'm like, I'm not going to get a shot. So I stand up on this trail. These 2 are still kneeling down, and I'm looking, and I'm like, I saw it. And it was an opening that was maybe like a foot wide by 3 feet tall,
Yeah.
a gap. And I'm like, if he walks through there, that's my only shot. Otherwise, he's walking. And he gets right before that and stops, and I draw back, and it felt like, I mean, any hunter's been there. Like, you feel like
Right.
you've been drawn back for a minute.
Forever.
It was long enough for one of those 2 to look at me and be like, what's going on? So all of a sudden he steps, and I let it, I like blacked out. I let it go. I couldn't see my arrow. I lost it, and David was like, did you hit him? I'm like, I have no idea. I have no idea the range that he was at.
Right.
I guessed for 30 yards. Yeah, I don't know. And we sat down, and like it was excitement. I was about crying. I'm like, I can't believe. I don't know if I hit him, but like the whole thing
The
was
whole
just
experience.
holy cow. And 15 minutes went by, and this is like one of the biggest lessons that I learned elk hunting. And I think you learn lessons all the time when you're hunting, but I looked at David and I was like, can I go just to see if I can see my arrow? And he's like, yeah, sure, whatever. And I was like, I just want to see if I find it there, and I'll stand down there and have you range me, because if it's 30 yards and I guess 30 yards from my pin, I'm going to feel a lot better about the shot,
Right.
even if I can't find my arrow. So I start walking down the hill, and I get probably 15 yards down the hill, kind of starting to look on the ground, and I look up, and there's the bull
He's standing there.
standing there looking at me. and I left my bow sitting up on the trail with those two.
Jeez.
That is like, don't ever leave your bow. Everybody
Number one,
knows that.
don't leave your bow.
Yeah, or your gun. No
Yep.
matter if you're in Colorado, if you're in Wisconsin, Michigan, whatever. Like, if you're gun hunting here and you got to go down and take a leak during the middle of the day, like rifle season,
take your weapon.
you take your weapon down
Yeah.
there with you. That wasn't the first time I've learned that lesson, so hopefully I get it this next time. Anyway, he turns and runs, and we go back, and then we give him an hour. We're like, okay, that wasn't good.
Could you see anything on him? Any holes? Any blood?
No, he
Nothing?
was facing straight at me, so I could see his like him just staring me in the eyes, and I just dropped to the ground and like tried to lay as flat as I could, thinking maybe he won't see me,
Right.
but he had.
Yep.
Yeah, he ran. After an hour, it had snowed the night before, so this was a north-facing slope, still had some snow on this slope, and we go up and find my knock. That was the first thing we found.
Really?
Well, that's weird. And then find a couple drops of blood, and then after that, like, the floodgates opened up. We're finding blood on both sides of the trail in the snow, and we get to, we're tracking them, and at one point we find my arrow, and it is covered. There's bubbles up on the fletchings.
Is it full? Like you didn't
Yeah.
break the arrow off or nothing?
Didn't break it off, nothing. Like, it must have, at that point, it had passed through, or he pulled it out or whatever. But like I said, bubbles, and I could not have been more happy. And David looked at me, he's like, we're walking up on this thing here pretty quick. And we track it down into that wallow, marshy area that I was talking about, and just like that, blood's gone, and there's tracks everywhere, and it's wet, and we're like, where
do you go?
Where do we go? There's blowdowns around probably 180 degrees of it, and we check everything, and we looked for, I think it was like 6 hours or something, and never found another drop of blood, never
Wow.
found him, nothing. And then hunted for 2 more days, and every time we'd go by that area, I'd walk around it a different way and whatever, and never found him.
So you never found him, but you go back this year and you find something, right?
Yeah, I found a dead head that I'm pretty sure is him. It was 357 yards away, uphill, which people always say, oh, if you shoot an animal and it's hurt, it's not going uphill, it's gonna follow contours or
Right.
whatever. This was uphill, and it was close, and again, I never saw this bull for like long enough to look at him and go, yep, he's a 6x6, and I didn't know what his rack looked like. Like,
Right.
the times I saw him, it was through the trees. He was staring at me. I dropped to the ground as fast as I could. That was all I had ever seen of him. I knew he was a good bull.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're walking, David and I again this year, and we're walking this hillside, and I spot like a joint of a leg. And I look at David, and I'm like, something went down around here. And he's like, look around, maybe you find the rest of it. And sure enough, see up the hill, I see 2 more leg joints, and I'm walking around, and it was this like half circle of small pine trees, and I come around the edge of it, and it's just this giant rack, dead head, and it had tucked its head down into these trees, like it went in there to hide.
Yep.
and died. So I can't be 100% sure that was the elk that I had shot.
But that was a good bull, though, too.
It was a good bull.
Yeah.
So it was like, I would like to say it's closure, but I don't know for sure if it's him. Either way, it was cool to find. I would like to believe it is, because it would help make me feel a little bit better. But
Right. So you think ultimately, I mean, even with whitetails or any sort of animal, you walking up there is kind of that's the reason why you probably didn't get him.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, with the amount of blood that he lost,
Yeah.
you think he's a dead elk?
He died. There's no doubt in my mind that's a dead elk.
Yeah.
The bubble, I mean, unless something crazy were to happen, like the amount of bubbles that we found on the fletchings and the end of the shaft of the arrow there was like, even if it was a single lung, I just have a hard time believing that thing lived with the amount of blood it lost.
And that's the same thing with whitetails, too. Like you said, a lot of people are like, they won't run uphill, or they won't, they're going to try to go downhill. But let's be honest, I mean, we've never been in a situation where we've had an arrow or a bullet in us. So,
Yeah.
I got a feeling that if you've got an arrow with a broadhead cutting in you, that you're just going to go wherever you go. Like there's no plan.
No.
Like, the elk's not going to sit there and look up that mountain and be like, well, hell, I'm not going up there,
I can't do that.
But maybe he got himself in a situation where he had blowdowns on his right or left, and that was the only way he could go. It was up.
Yeah.
And, I don't know. That's what I just don't put much merit into that. Every situation's different. So, the more blood trails that you can be on, the more you're going to learn, in my opinion. And, I've had deer run uphill and then back downhill and then back uphill, and it's like, where's this thing going? And I've had ones do figure eights and do circles, and I hit a deer a couple years ago in the liver with a bow, and I went after her too quick and walked up on her as she's bedded, and I'm like, well, I got to back out. I backed out for like 6 hours and come back, and we like to have markers, so we take markers that are like biodegradable, so you can leave them in the woods and
toilet
stuff.
paper,
toilet paper,
whatever,
yeah. So when you're tracking, when we were tracking, we'd come and we'd pass the toilet paper that we had come in. We'd passed it 4 times. We kept going back and forth, and we're like, what the hell? Like, but we're only covering about 100-yard area. She literally, looking back at it now, when we found her, she just was doing circles in that area.
Didn't want to lay down.
Did not want. Yeah, it was just like uncomfortable, and she wasn't feeling good. Obviously, and it makes me feel terrible. But it's just one of those things. Like, I just think they're gonna do what they're gonna do, and there's no plan. I don't think so. I don't know. It's like I said, just be on more blood trails than if you have a buddy that's like,
help
hey,
me.
help.
Go help.
Can I go help? I want to see, you learn something new on every blood trail. So, but.
And the weight thing, that's, for me, like, I don't care what it is that I'm hunting going forward, aside from maybe turkey, like, I'm going to play by the hour rule at the very least. Like, give it an hour to see what's going to happen and then go assess it.
Right.
But even 15, like, and that's the thing with elk too, that's like a common thing is after you shoot, if you're with somebody, if you're by yourself, you should start cow calling right away, because with a bow and arrow, a lot of times you hear like they don't know what just happened. Right. So you can get their interest back right away, and then they'll just sit there.
So much adrenaline rolling. It could have been another bull come up and spar him or something.
Right. Yeah. So that he may have just stood there until he either tipped over or laid down and then just expired. But
yeah, it's a crazy thing, man.
Yeah. Those blood trails, any blood trail that you're ever on is like, it's such a tough feeling.
It is.
You know what I mean? Like,
I did it this year with Jim Abbott on the blood trails. I'm like, because I watched him walk off the field knowing it was a high hit. And when I waited like 9 hours or something like that. I waited all day, shot him in the morning, and didn't go back until like right at last light that night, and didn't find much blood. And everybody else knows the story. He survived, and it was just a bad hit. Like, so
it's so hard to call it off too.
It really is.
I think if you've been there, which you will at some point or whatever, like there's a point where you're following it, and I think you just start to kind of know. Yeah. And that is the worst feeling in the world.
But you keep pushing. Then usually you have people helping you, and it's like it's getting late, and it's like you don't want these people to be out here too, and it's like, so that is a hard one to pull the plug, and like, when do you do it? But I don't know, man. We've all been there. Everybody's lost a deer or an animal, and if you haven't, then you haven't been hunting long enough, because it will happen. So
as long as you learn from it, I guess, is the main thing. So.
Well, to wrap it up here, I've got one more that I want to get into, and that's we just kind of wrapped up Denver. After last year, you got the job with us, moved to Michigan now. You just bought land with 10 acres, huntable and everything, timber on it, and we're starting it from square one. So break down your 10 acres, and I want to know what do we got to do here to get it going?
Yeah. So I moved here with my girlfriend, and we bought a house, and it's on 10 acres. It's a really kind of weird parceled piece. It's very narrow and long. So I live kind of near a wildlife refuge, which I think is going to bode pretty well for me. It's got fields that are over there. There's a river that's running through it with some swamp and hardwoods. So there's a good variety. My piece has swamp up front. It rolls up to the house, and then it starts to drop back off behind the house a little bit, and it gets really piney, small pine trees, probably about 12 feet. And then behind that, it jumps up onto like a pine knoll.
Yep.
So it's these big red pines that are back there. And then it rolls again behind that to swamp again, where it pours into the creek behind. So
where's your house on the property? Because I haven't been there yet, and we've been talking about wanting to go over there and walk it and everything, get a plan going. But like, where's your property set on the farm or on the piece?
So there's the road where it runs up to, and then my house, like I said, long, narrow. So from the road to the house is probably 300 yards.
Okay.
400 yards.
From the main road.
From the main road.
Yep.
And then there's another house that's kind of up on the main road that it juts out around. So my house is up front, and then I would say that the majority of the property is back behind.
Okay. And that's all timber. Like in your front yard, there's no timber in there?
We probably have about 40 to 50 yards of just grass around us. Okay. But it goes into woods pretty darn quick. And around the house, it's mostly hardwoods. So there's some big oak trees, maples, and things like that. We've been seeing deer in the yard and turkey. The other day, Christy was watching TV and turns around, and there's like 2 hens
turkeys right
in the
there.
yard, and I was like, "Oh, that's a good thing."
So what does your property have, and what do you think it needs?
It certainly has it has a water source. I do know that. There is a lot of water that's around us. It's got good cover. In the back, there's quite a few blowdowns, but I know it needs food.
Food.
Yeah, I know there's a bunch of food across the road, but I don't have food for them.
Yeah. What's your plan? Like, what do you want to do to kind of get food in there? Do you know what now with the new Michigan laws, you can't bait or anything.
I know.
You can't be a baiter. See.
Yeah, you can't, and it's pretty swampy around there, so I'm not sure.
Is there any high ground? You said there was a pine knoll up there.
Pine, so I feel like that's gonna be pretty acidic.
Yeah. So my biggest thing is like we could get in there and do some hinge cutting to do a couple things, and that's make some more cover, but also be able to get open that canopy up a little bit, maybe get some new grasses up and growing that they can browse on in the property, and then maybe just even go in there and open up like a little 1/8 acre spot where you can put a little food plot,
that would be cool.
Like a little destination plot, because I've looked at the property on on X and stuff like that, and across the road from you adjacent there is ag fields that nobody can hunt, and the deer are yarding up in there because you've seen them. So, and you've got a nice little pinch on one of your corners in a transition where they go through there, I think, from aerial, but I can't wait to get on the ground and go see it.
Yeah.
But this is what I love the most is like these little acres. Last week I talked to Matt Zoll, and he has 10 acres over on the west side of Michigan, and he was hunting and on that and doing a lot of improvements to make his 10 acres really good. And he's now on his destination plot, he's getting like 15 to 20 deer at a time on it.
Crazy.
And it's like right next to his driveway.
That's so cool.
So
and that might be an option for me, actually. I just don't know how much. I need to pay attention a little bit more to sunlight too, and see what I'm getting.
Yeah, and that's one thing I can vouch for. And the piece, my personal piece, the 1 acre that I've been doing stuff in, is like it was all canopy was up high, and there was just no grasses or nothing on the floor or on the forest floor. Since I've done hinge cutting the last 2 years, I mean, grass is getting up waist high now, where they can bed in it. I've never had rabbits in there before. Now I've got rabbits up the yin-yang. They're all over. And deer bedding in it. I can plant. I just did some frost seeding in there. I've done clover, but they're browsing, and all that canopy that's up 50, 60, 70 feet is on the floor now. Trees are still living. They're woody browse. They're eating on that, so that's food. And if you have oaks on the farm, last year we had a really good acorn crop, and I don't know what it's going to be this year, but if you got some white oaks, red oaks, they're going to like that too. So
yeah, well, just like the funneling too, like obviously you've given me a lot of knowledge on hinge cutting, and I'm like, yeah, I know I need to do it. And when you have such a small parcel, I feel like being able to kind of direct where I want the deer to go is going to be helpful.
Yeah, and there's some different ways, in my opinion, that you can hinge cut. You can hinge cut for access, in which that's what I did this year in the 1 acre, is just strictly for a barrier so I can access more stands. Last year I did a lot for bedding, strictly bedding, and open up the canopy to get that, that new successional growth. And there's different ways to cut that, on how high you cut. I don't, in my opinion, I don't think you need to cut anything that's like your face or higher. It's all lower than that, whether it's shin height, knee height, and the different trees. There's a lot of trees you can't hinge, like they just like break off, and it does suck though that because oaks are good hingers too, and you want to keep the oaks as well. So, we'll just have to go through there and look and see what you have and just kind of formulate a plan. But the cool thing is, like on a small piece like that, if that is a funnel where we were talking on the corner, we can make that where deer have to go through there even more, like just kind of block off some and just make it funnel by one of your stands. And that's what's fun and cool.
That's
about
awesome.
It. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that.
We'll have to get over there and maybe do another podcast about how, our whole progression through this whole thing.
Before and after.
Yeah. And we're getting in April now here. April 1st will be next week, about when this is dropping. But I like to get hinge cutting done before buds start popping. I mean, I know you can do it in there, but, when the buds are going and everything. But I like to do it before and just, get everything set up. But I actually have hinge cuts from a couple years ago that all the shoots and everything come off the stump. I can hinge those shoots now.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're like new trees that I can hinge again. So
that's awesome. That's crazy.
You can experiment with paracord, pulling some of those down, so we don't necessarily have to hinge trees either. Like if we find some little trees that we can pull over, and you can put a stake in the ground and paracord it, and then deer will use that as like a barrier, as like a hinge cut as well.
So many options.
So many. Just got to get boots on the ground and look at it.
Yeah.
So, I think we wrap it up, man. How was your first podcast experience?
It was great. Thank you for having me. I was a little bit nervous. I've never done one before, but no, it's really awesome. So I appreciate it. Yeah.
Well, cool. Just everybody, reminder just to go to iTunes and leave a review and leave a 5-star rating if you will. And as you could see, last Friday we did not have a coffee call because we are kind of pedaling back on the coffee calls right now. We're trying to formulate a plan where maybe that might be just a series we do throughout the winter. But now that it's getting warmer and everything, and it's a lot to do 2 podcasts a week, so we are going to do it. We're just trying to formulate a plan on how we're going to do it. It's not going to be like an every week thing. So just to update everybody through that, I will let you know further once we know. So again, thanks for listening, and hope everybody has a good week. If you guys are in the market for new strings and cables this year, go to americasbestbowstrings.com, customize your new strings and cables, and at checkout, type in Fall Podcast to get $10 off orders $99 and over. So all you got to do is go to americasbestbowstrings.com, like I said, and at checkout type in Fall Podcast to get $10 off any sets of custom strings that you want from America's Best.
I am natural.